Hello, everyone, and welcome back. In today's video, I thought I would take you along with me on the initial stages of how I start larger pieces of watercolor. Feel free to sketch or draw along with me as you enjoy the video. A majority of my watercolor pieces always start off as sketches. I really love having a sketchbook, and I really encourage you to have one in your day-to-day life. Whether it's just a little notepad the size of a post-it note or the humongo sketchbook that I'm drawing in right now, I think that it's always invigorating, and I always feel like I have a sense of freedom within my sketchbook that I'm trying really hard to instill in my paintings. Art supplies can be really expensive, and as much as we always want to experiment with the materials that we have and experiment with paintings, sometimes it's just more practical to experiment in your sketchbook and to take little notes and write things down that you can take into more quote-unquote finished pieces. Since graduating, I find that my sketchbook primarily acts as a record keeper for me. So a lot of things within my sketchbook nowadays just record what I see. That deals with figure drawing and still lifes, kind of like this one. I had a jar of begonia trimmings from my plants out in front of me, and I tried to analyze the shapes and forms that the shadows and leaves were making. There were a few times where I got a little bit too detail oriented and I couldn't quite see the forest through the trees. I find that nowadays, if I don't start off with sketches, if I go straight into a painting, I just try to get way too descriptive. And it ultimately isn't something that I want within the piece. It's just something that I gravitate towards. Not to say that being descriptive and being detail-oriented is wrong in creating art. I find that there's definitely a place for that. With the practice that I have now, I find that there's a fine line that I like to balance between being descriptive and being too lenient on what I see. So I don't know if that quite makes sense. Maybe through walking with me through the process of creating this piece that I have in my mind, you might be able to see what I'm talking about. So what is this piece I have in my mind? Great question, Elise. I have been thinking about lily pads a lot lately, and then those lily pads turned into begonia leaves, and now it's kind of a mix between lily pads and begonia leaves. And you'll be able to see at the end what I have planned, but to start the piece, I first need to understand what I was using as a reference, as a starting point. I find that lately I can't just jump straight into imaginative brush strokes and being really inventive with what I'm creating. I have to sort of anchor myself in the observational. So, to anchor myself in this piece, I thought I would draw out a few begonia leaves and figure out just what they're doing. How do they move in space? What forms do they create? And how does that contrast between the more burgundy underside play with the more evergreen tops? So, as I was finishing up the leaves that I was drawing, I felt really invigorated and inspired by the roots that were starting to sprout on the bottom of the trimmings that I had. So, I just took some moments up top to play around with what was happening with the root system and have a little fun there. I don't think it will transfer into the final piece, but it's always nice to simply stop and appreciate something. So after I finished the sketching session, I felt really excited and I was really enjoying what I was seeing the leaves doing and the different forms and what they were making. So I decided to jump straight into some watercolor and trying to do some quick watercolor studies in another sketchbook. Um, well, to be honest, I don't really like how the first session turned out. I feel like I tried to paint what I saw, which is fine, but I was trying to be way too literal with it, and I feel like I almost suffocated the paint by trying to make it look like something, or to draw and paint what I was seeing, but not really allow the watercolor to be watercolor. I wanted to show this anyways because this is why I love repetition. If I don't like something that I make along the way, I can just try again. And I could tell while I was making this piece that I was getting way too finicky. Yet I wanted to see it to the end, and I wanted to try to salvage it. I feel like it's a decent study, and yet I got a little bit too carried away with it having to be exact, rather than letting the paint express itself, per se. I already have some video footage of tonight's painting session moving on from this study, and I feel really confident after tonight's session. It definitely was a big step away from what you see in this video. I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to record me working on the large piece. uh, I don't know how that's gonna work, but we'll figure it out together. Um, right now I'm planning for a single sheet of Arch's watercolor paper, and I believe the dimensions are along the line of 24 by 28. I could be completely making up those dimensions. Either way, it's much larger than the small study you see me working on here, or even in the next session of painting that I've done. I hope that some of you could find time to paint, sketch, or simply relax while watching this video and following me along as I start these initial studies into another piece. I feel like I've done plenty of talking as of now. I'm kind of a rambler, don't really know what to say, and at the same time I just keep talking. So I think I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of the video. I'll see you guys next time.